Hope you're well. Hope you're hope you're hope you're swell. Hope you're wavy. Hope you're gravy. Hope you're gravy. I've just been consumed by this particular topic. I was just ruminating over the past couple of days. I've just been thinking about where is the world going in terms of what societies are going to look like, because I feel like no one's really addressing this in the sense that this is happening, and we just need to look at. Let me just be clear. When I look at many places around the world, this is happening in a lot of places where birth rates are declining, and there was an article that was released recently about the UK needing to rely on immigration to mitigate the effects of very, very, very low birth rates, because there's a labor shortage because there's not enough people being born, and that affects tax burden. So if your tax base shrinks, a population shrinks, which means the amount of taxes being paid shrinks. Therefore, you need to increase the amount of tax on the general populace to account for that reduction in tax. So when you have less people, you're going to end up paying more taxes. You're going to have labor shortages. So the economy is going to suffer because key industries don't have enough people to maintain them, all this sort of stuff. So they're like, okay, the way to, at least in part, to mitigate that is to have people from other countries come in. And a lot of people are against this, and I understand why some people would be against this. If you're used to your country being one way for a very long time, and then all of a sudden they're saying we're just going to import people from a bunch of different parts of the world, you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen to our culture? What's going to happen to our way of life? And that's a valid concern. It's a serious concern. Those questions should be answered out. How do we maintain our society? How do we not devolve into madness? And I just don't know if, regardless of the culture and stuff, I don't know if there's any way around the reality that immigration is going to happen. I think illegal immigration is wrong, and that shouldn't be a thing, and I think everyone should be on board with that. You shouldn't just let people just walk into your country. You need to vet people, you need to know who's coming into your country. But when you talk about people moving around, that's a tale as old as time. Human beings have always migrated. So you think about when it's winter, the area you're inhabiting is too cold, for example. Humans, they don't just stick around, they leave, or they'll die. They always pursue better conditions. So if your country's in turmoil, more likely than not, you're going to seek better conditions elsewhere. That doesn't mean you have to be accepted, but people need to understand humans have always just moved around, and I do think we need policies in place and borders and boundaries and whatnot, but you can't stop the flow of immigration. You can only control it, you can only regulate it, right? And you can just look for the best ones, the best of the best, instead of just accepting anyone and everyone. Some people are genuine threats. You got some people who are killers, you got some people who sexually assault, all these sort of things. You don't want those people. You don't want people who are lazy. You don't want people that are just going to be welfare babies and drag down the system. But again, I don't know if it's something you can stop, especially when you consider technology, how it's evolved, and how easy it is to travel these days. When you consider the colonial period, in which there was a lot of crossing of the oceans, people capturing slaves, bringing them back to their countries, whatnot. There's a whole bunch of travel where people were just being exchanged, and there was all sorts of mixing of cultures and races. After that, it is a wrap in terms of people keeping to themselves, because you open the floodgates, you open the doors, so you say, oh, we can cross oceans now. Say less. And ever since then, I think it's just been rapidly increasing the amount of migration we see these days. It's just, it shows no sign of slowing down. It's only going up. And in the face of declining birth rates, I don't think countries are going to have the luxury of saying we want to stick to ourselves and just be isolated and whatnot. Yeah, you'll die. And some people might be fine with that, but a lot of people aren't. So I think when push comes to shove and you're faced with, survival or the extinction of your civilization, people will choose survival when push comes to shove. But I think you have to be smart about it. I think right now people are having the wrong conversations. People are having conversations of how do we stop immigration, all this sort of stuff. You can't. You should be having conversations about how do we preserve our culture. Like, okay, people are going to come in. They're coming. How do we integrate them? How do we create as cohesive of a culture as we can when we're mixing with so many different people from around the world? So Japan, as an example, is just, the numbers are just bad, man. South Korea is even worse. Oh man, South Korea is just, it's a mess. Taiwan is next. I think Taiwan is the worst, and then South Korea is a very, very close second. They're basically tied, South Korea and Taiwan, but I think Taiwan is just slightly worse, but they're both horrendous in terms of their birth rates and their fertility rates. They're just shrinking. Not enough children, not nearly enough children are being born. And Japan is trailing behind them, but it's also very bad. Places like Italy are very bad. The whole of Europe is Europe as a continent has the worst birth and fertility rates in the whole world. There's no one shrinking more than Europe. There's no one that has less children than Europe. It's very bad. And East Asia as a region, to know about specific regions, East Asia is the worst on the planet. But Europe as a continent, compare Europe to Asia, it's not even close. Like Europe is just in its own league when it comes to birth and fertility rate. It's grim. So it's like people don't want to hear it, but it's like, what are you going to do besides rely on immigration? And what's the solution? Y'all aren't having children. People think there's an overpopulation crisis because they don't understand demographics, they don't understand the economy and how it works. So they think that, people float around this idea that 1 billion people is the ideal population for Earth. It's a very ignorant way of looking at things, because first of all, population is not distributed evenly across the world. Some parts of the world have more people than others. So Africa as a continent does not have the problem that Europe and Asia and the Americas have. Africa has a lot of people. The replacement rate is 2.1, I think, in terms of the amount of children you need to sustain your population. Africa is well above that. Africa is well above that. So it's like the African population is not going to be shrinking anytime soon. Regardless of economic circumstances, regardless of war or whatever, Africans just tend to just keep reproducing. So it's just puzzling to me when people blame the economy. It's like, if you look at the poorest places in the world, and many of which are in Africa, the people have children regardless. It's not because they're dumb Neanderthals who can't help themselves and they just keep having children. That's not it. I think it's a cultural thing where we value life, we value offspring, we value progeny, all this sort of stuff. And as cultures become more westernized, more modern, you see those values fall away. So it's so important to marry modernism, to marry some aspects of modern culture with the idea that we have to, children are a blessing and we have to keep having kids. Going back to what I was saying about why it's ignorant to say 1 billion is the ideal population, you have to understand economy is not the work industry. As society grows, as we become more technologically advanced, that 1 billion is not going to cut it anymore. And I've used this example many times, but I just try to paint a picture for people. If you're running a stall on the side of a street, that was your business, how your business started. You're running a stall on the side of the street, you're selling items to people, but then word got around that this person sells really good products. Maybe you sell food, maybe you're running a little hot dog stand or something like that. Best hot dogs in town. People start getting wind of you and your business. Now more and more people are coming to buy from you. The operation is getting bigger, but you're still operating from this little store. It's not cutting it anymore. Now you need to buy an actual shop on the side of the street. So it's this little shop that's part of a bigger building. It's in a block of shops. Now you have like your little shop, and you've hired maybe like an extra employee. So now you're serving people, and more people come. Now you're like, okay, now I need to expand even further. So now you have a bigger building. You expand, maybe like the shop next to you, they had to leave for whatever reason, the economy is tough. So now you break down that wall, you expand your shop, and then things are even bigger. Now you have a full-on restaurant. You have your own building and your own plot of land, and you can expand from there. These just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. More employees are needed, more resources, more connections, more this, more that. As the operation gets bigger and more complex, more effort, more people is required. It's not just you anymore. You can't just rely on yourself. You need to rely on a whole bunch of people to meet the demand of what you've built. It's the same concept but on a global scale. We've become so advanced. Our civilization has grown so much over time. The idea that 1 billion people are going to cut it's so like laughably ignorant. It's like that's not how it works. Think about all these industries we've built. Think about all the people that have to survive and need to work, need food, need this, need that, and that you can't. We need to have children, guys, to sustain everything. And the less children we have, the worse it's going to get. We can regress. We can go back to simpler times where things weren't as technologically advanced. But if you want to maintain this, you're going to have to continue to reproduce. But you can say, let's just go back to simpler times. Fair enough. Understand the price you pay for that. It's not just going back, it's lots of suffering, generations and generations of people suffering under the collapse, because it has to collapse. It's not just going to go away and fade like nicely. It'll collapse on us, and there'll be a lot of death, a lot of suffering, a lot of people starving, a lot of chaos, social unrest, crime going up, all these sort of things. Because as economic conditions worsen, people turn to crime, all these sort of, it'll be chaos. So understand when you say that we must regress, we must go back, okay? There's a price for that. So we can go backwards, or we can just do what we're supposed to be doing anyways, having children, having families, and reproducing, so that they can inherit a legacy and improve upon what we built. Earth can house a lot more people than we realize. It's just the idea that we're overpopulated is so wrong and silly. I don't think we'll ever max out Earth's capacity. Even if we have 10 billion people, I think the Earth's true maximum capacity is a lot higher than that. Even if we reach 10 billion. If you look at the vast stretches of land that are just not being used right now, there's many parts of the world that are just completely uninhabited. If you look at the actual footprint of humans, like the places we collect, I think the majority of the earth is just not lived in. And some parts we still need to tame, we still need to conquer. There's some parts of the earth that are still just very wild, and we need to settle there and make it livable and all this sort of thing. But I think most of the earth is still very much uninhabited. We tend to concentrate in very small parts of the planet, and that's where we live. If you look at Australia as an example, if you look at where people live in Australia, you just see there'll be dots that show where humans are concentrated, and then the rest is just empty. Then maybe a small dot here and a small dot here. People live, but then the vast majority of the land is just unoccupied. It's hilarious that people think that Earth doesn't have space. It has way more than enough space, guys. our issue is not that we don't have space or resources. I think we have more than enough resources. We're just not using them. And we've been told that human beings are a cancer on Earth, and there's this whole green agenda thing where we have to, we talk about fossil fuels and all this sort of stuff. And I think a lot of this fear mongering, they've been doing this for decades. For decades, we were told that the Earth is going to end. It's going to end on this date, and never end. It's going to end on this date, and never end. It's going to acid rain. It's going to rain from the sky. That never happened. I think there's a lot of fear mongering. I think we should take care of our planet. Don't get me wrong. I think we should be clean and try and preserve our oceans and all this sort of stuff. But I think things are not nearly as bad as people make it sound. There are a lot of young people who've been brainwashed to think that in the next 2 decades or something, the world is going to end. It's not going to end. They've been making these predictions for the longest time. If you just learn your history, you just study history, they've been making predictions like this, and it never happens. That's not to say we should be reckless and not take care of it, but you need to understand that sometimes people say these things because fear is a great way to control people and get you to go along with things that you would normally not go along with. It's a very anti-human agenda, and we need to fight against it and understand that it's important to have children, it's important to prioritize our flourishing. So, let's drill, let's use oil, let's use fossil fuels, it's okay. We'll find ways, as technology improves, we'll eventually find alternatives, but in the meantime, the Earth can handle it, we'll be okay. We'll be okay. So I think when we talk about how people are not having children because cost of living and whatnot, it doesn't help that we've banned things like fracking and all these sort of things that can genuinely cultivate prosperity. We've banned not banned, but we highly tax the use of fossil fuels, making it very expensive to operate businesses that will require fossil fuels and all these sort of things. So if you can remove these stupid regulations, these stupid anti-human regulations that make people's lives so hard, guys, do you know how much cheaper things would be if we just made all this abundant energy just more accessible? This is stuff that's in the ground, it's all around us, but we're not allowed to use it because someone decided that if we do, the world's going to end. It's not. Do you know how much easier life would become? Technology is improving rapidly. We will eventually find ways. It's so stunning because you think about nuclear energy, which is a viable alternative, but countries aren't investing in research. Countries aren't opening up nuclear power plants. I think France has power plants, but they shut them down for some weird reason, all these sort of things. People are not exploring meaningful alternatives, but they also are banning people from effectively banning people from using fossil fuels as well. It's so ridiculous. It's almost as if they don't want humans to flourish. It's almost as if they want humans to suffer and die. I think it's a population control scheme where they're trying to reduce the amount of people on the planet. It makes it. I really do think there's a lot of conspiracies afoot. It just doesn't make sense when you think about why are they doing this? Because they refuse to explore the nuclear option, which is objectively better for the Earth in terms of pollution and all these other things than fossil fuels would be, but they don't want to explore the nuclear option, and they're taxing the living daylights out of people who use fossil fuels as well, and they're telling people to use these other alternative renewable sources which are just expensive and inefficient. They just make life harder. It's almost as if they're trying to kill us. And I think they are. I really do think they are. But all of that creates economic conditions that are not sexy. You're not trying to have kids when things are this hard, but at the same time, again, you look at the poorest places in the world, they still have children. They're like, this is what we do. We have kids. Because kids are amazing. And there's practical considerations as well. It's not just kids are amazing. It's not like it's just Care Bears. They're doing everything out of the goodness of their heart. I think there's also like this idea that the more children I have, that maybe one of them can go off and do something and bring the family out of poverty. But I think it's a culture that values family, that values community. Ultimately, that's what the reason why you see in places like Africa, why, despite conditions, birth rates are going up, not down. It's only when you introduce Western culture, when you introduce a lot of modern concepts that you see birth rates go down. So when people become more quote unquote educated, what does that really mean? That's when you start, because you're educated, but you're going extinct. Yeah, okay. I don't think that's true education. So I do think it's possible for your society to become more advanced, to have better infrastructure, all these other things, but still maintain good birth rates and whatnot. I think what tends to happen, especially when women tend to go to university and pursue career path, that they obviously they start to say, I don't want to have kids right now, I'll wait. But what tends to happen is women wait until maybe like their 30s to have children, and then they have one or two, if any, because there's a biological clock. The older you get as a woman, the harder it is to have children. So women are just having less children because they're pursuing careers and all these sort of things. So a conversation needs to be had there as well. Not necessarily to say women should stop working, but I think we should have I think it used to be the case that we would champion people who are wives and mothers. That was viewed as like an amazing thing. You think about Mary, the mother of Christ, and how that was an icon, how she was an icon for a lot of people and whatnot. And we used to venerate mothers. Now it's like if you're a stay-at-home mom and you're just taking care of your kid, it's kind of like people kind of look at you like, what are you doing? You're not a lawyer, you're not a CEO, you're not this, you're not a go-getter. It's not viewed the same way anymore in a lot of societies. When a woman says she wants to stay at home and take care of her kids, it's viewed in a very negative light. So I'm not saying get rid of all career women. I'm saying that what do we value as a society? What do we promote? We don't have to create policies. We don't have to tell people do this or do that. What we can do is just promote certain things, put certain things on pedestals. So if someone wants to be a lawyer, if someone wants to start some big business or whatever, the options available for you. But what does the society promote? Who are the heroes of the society? So right now, our society is very career oriented, right? We just tell people, women in particular, go get that career, girl, do. And the consequence of that is they don't think about having children as much, and it leads to these economic crises you're in where you don't have sufficient populations to sustain your society. You're just not having children, and it's a civilizational threat because you could go extinct. Places like Japan are, if you think about the work culture in Japan and the amount of women in the workforce, I think women, the marriage rate, the average age of marriage, it went up. So I think it used to be like somewhere in the 20s for a Japanese woman. Now it's like in the 30s or like late 20s. Average age of marriage, I think it might be like the late 20s or early 30s. Between the late 20s and early 30s. And that's when they get married. By the time they have children, it's probably much later than that. And you just look at the consequences. The society is shrinking. I'm not saying that's the sole cause. No, it's not the sole cause. It's not. There's several factors at play, but that's definitely a big one. It might be the biggest one, actually. It just makes sense. Like, obviously, I'm not saying this to dunk on women or anything. I'm just being practical. If women are working, they're getting jobs, they have this career, whatnot, and the career is the most important thing to them at that point in time, they're not going to have kids, just logically, right? That's not me trying to be, people accuse me of being sexist on. I'm just, guys, just logically. Put yourself in the mind of someone who's just graduated university, she's entering the workforce. She's probably not thinking like it's time to start a family right now. That thought probably comes in her 30s. So what happens when basically all the women are thinking that way? Yeah, you're just not going to have that many children. And it just compounds as generations pause. You're having less and less people. And again, it's not the sole cause. I think there's several factors at play. But when you're seeing that this is happening across the world, many parts of the world are seeing the same thing, and it all started at a very particular point around the 1950s, 60s, which happens to be also when there was this push to get women into the workforce. I mean, can we really like question what the main problem is? And I always have to reiterate this. I'm not saying just, you're not allowed to work, blah, 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 blah. I'm just saying, what do we promote as the most honorable, most like aspirational thing to attain? You know? I really don't think you need to have laws that say you're banned from doing this. I think that's ineffective, and it's not gonna, yeah, it's just not gonna have the results you want it to have. I think the best thing we can do is make people want to be mothers, make people want to be wives. That's why the messaging around these things is so important. What do you venerate as a culture? Who are your idols? Who are your icons? And I just feel like mothers and wives aren't really celebrated like that. It's not seen as a cool or amazing thing to be a wife or a mother. It's just not these days. I think people want to be Beyonce and Cardi B and whatnot. And, do you actually want that? Anyway, like, or maybe not go there. Maybe like some doctor in your community or whatever. Like you want to be this businessman, you want to be the president, and I want to be the first woman president. All this sort of stuff, and like no one, when people are asked in class, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? No one says I want to be a wife and mother and just take care of the home. Because people are like, what? You slave. that's the vibe. No one says that. Not that many people, but I feel like that's genuinely like a beautiful thing, and we need people like that. We need a lot more women who are like, that's my thing. I can't wait to get married and have children and take care of home. Because again, guys, when you're seeing it happen in so many different parts of the world, these population collapses, and they all coincide with this time in which women are being pushed into the workforce. That's when a lot of it started. So there's a debate happening in Britain right now where they're saying we need to just deport all immigrants. Someone posted on X, like they said from 1997, so everyone that immigrated to this country from 1997 and onwards and their descendants, deport those people, which is so insane to me. There's a lot of moral, ethical questions to that, but also just logistically, it would never happen. It's just an insane suggestion. But so like thousands of people were liking that post, which is just like dumbfounding to me. People are very ignorant. People are blaming immigration for the UK's sinking birth rates, which it just shows how little people understand these problems around these population collapses. People just don't get it. Guys, like mass immigration in Britain in particular started in the 90s. We're talking about mass immigration, like people from all over the world getting in. That's like the 90s. Britain's population collapse started in the 70s. It had nothing to do with immigration. In fact, immigration probably boosts your numbers in terms of your birth rates and fertility rates, because immigrants people who immigrate from other countries tend to have higher fertility rates than the native population. Because a lot of people are not coming from the West, they're coming from maybe Africa or parts of South Asia or whatnot. They tend to have higher fertility rates, higher birth rates. The culture is different. It's a cultural thing. It's not genetic. It's not any of that. It's cultural. People just have different viewpoints on children, the importance of having children, so on and so forth. But something interesting happens when immigrants integrate into the culture, into the society. Their birth rates, their fertility rates sink, which shows you that this is a cultural issue. Because if you're coming from a poorer country and you're having more children, then you go to a wealthier country and you start having less children, what's happening? There's a culture that is like parasitic. It's not conducive for life. It's cancerous. You have less and less children the more you stay in that society. It kills humans. So there's a cultural issue. And people don't understand this. Blaming immigration for your sinking birth rates when the problem precedes mass immigration. So that's what I was saying, like, the 70s, what was happening in the 70s? So the civil rights movement in the US was around the 60s, late 60s, when there was this big push to there were genuine gripes and genuine issues with the suburban stay-at-home mom lifestyle, because that could be vapid, it could be very boring and draining, especially if you've moved away from your family, you're living in the suburb, you don't really have friends, it's very boring, and just your day is just this gray routine of cold clean, and maybe you're someone who just has a lot to offer the world and you're just stuck in this bubble. It can be draining. So that was a complaint of someone. The other side of the story that they never tell, which is important to tell, because you need to tell both sides of the story to get the full picture, was there were women who were actually happy in that lifestyle, because there were some suburbs where you have friends. You'd have friends in the neighborhood, women that you would link up with, and they'd have book clubs, and they'd have community events that they'd organize together, and all sorts of things that made their lives very fulfilling, and they were close to family, and they didn't have to work some very draining 9 to 5. So there were some women who were not having a great time, and there's some women who were. So we need to understand both, and then say, how can we create a society that makes it as great as possible to be a stay-at-home mother, so those who want to do that have as much incentive as possible to do it, and those who still want to pursue career can still do that as well. You don't have to ban anyone from doing anything. I believe the best way to get someone to do something is not through coercion, it's not through force, but it has to be voluntary. They have to volunteer to do it, because when that's how you know they'll do the best possible job of that, because they want to do it. They volunteer. They're here because they want to be here. Your wife is at home because she wants to be at home. How do we generate societies like that? So I think that the messaging around a lot of this stuff has just been wrong, and we see this push again, late 60s in America, women need to go to work, yada yada yada. And as America goes, the world follows. We just see a spread in this idea, and many parts of the world start adopting this culture. Is it a coincidence that birth rates in the UK and Britain started sinking in the 70s? Is it a coincidence? No. And many parts of the world saw similar dips at similar times. And the entirety of Europe is below replacement rate, so the entirety of Europe is shrinking and shrinking rapidly. And I was going back to what I started the video saying. I don't know if there's any saving Europe as we know it. I think the only way out of this is immigration. I don't know if there's the way out of it, to be honest. It might be a situation of collapse, total collapse, and then rebuild from the ashes at this point. And I don't want to be this doom and gloom guy, but it's not looking good. But I don't know if we can stave off the immigration thing. It's like, yeah, unless you're on a software, which people will think like, oh, software, but then it's like when the suffering hits, you're like, oh, no, bring the immigrants in, bring them in, because we can't handle this. The tax, like, oh my God, you're paying taxes out of your ass. The tax out of your ears, your nose, your ass, it's just taxes and expenses. Everything's just, the crime is out there. It's so suffocating. You're gonna want relief. And then there are all these labor shortages. Yeah, you're gonna be like, just let them in. Just let them in. We need help. Because this is getting crazy. It might not be that bad right now, but it will get that bad if people don't do something about it right now. So those who are proactive, the world leaders who are proactive, what they'll do is they'll like, guys, listen, we can't stave off what's coming. There's this guy, Nigel Farage, who's conservative, but the conservative base, especially like most of the white conservatives, they're like full on anti-immigration. Well, maybe not anti-immigration, but they just want like they wanted to slow down, or some of them just wanted to straight up stop. I think Nigel Farage recently came out and said, "Yeah, we need immigrants," and people calling him a traitor, and they saying yada yada yada. Who is this guy? Oh my God, he's not a real conservative. I think he's looking at the numbers. I think he's looking at the numbers and like, man. Maybe part of it is also like what's politically popular. Maybe most British people are for immigrants. I don't know. I don't know what percentage of British people are for versus against immigration. They keep voting for like the wokest politicians, so I'd imagine they're for immigration. I don't know, the majority of them at least, even if it's a slim majority. If you look at who they keep voting for, I'd imagine a lot of them are very, very woke. Which, it's not great, but when it comes to immigration, it's not about being woke versus not woke, it's about being pragmatic. This is not a liberal or conservative issue, this is a survival issue. It's like, what other alternative is there when your population is collapsing and you have these massive labor shortages and your economy is crumbling? You need help. Like, what's the alternative? Because someone might suggest a bunch of economic policies that could help family planning, make family planning easier and all these sort of things. But that takes time, man, and y'all don't have the luxury of time. Some of these things might take lifetimes to really bear the proper fruit. Who knows? People will say that the more immigrants there are, the higher the cost of living is. There's like not enough houses and all these other things. So therefore, if we just get rid of the immigrants, things will become cheaper and all this. It's like, no, that's not what's going to happen. First of all, your birth crisis precedes mass immigration, so people need to get that understood. But also, if you were to, so the one guy said deport everyone from 1997 onwards and their descendants. So that's about 18 to, I looked it up, that's about 18 to 20% of your workforce, of your taxpayers, or people who are contributing to society. 18 to 20%. Whatever short-term benefits you get from that will be grossly overshadowed, undercut by the negative consequences, the ramifications of removing such an essential part of your economy. And things will just get worse. Your birth rates will plummet even further because they were keeping it up. Fertility rates will drop as well. You just spiral even further. The economy will tank and it will become even harder to have children. Everything will just compound and things will just get worse by every measure. So even the short-term benefits will no longer be benefits. Everything will just get worse. So there's no scenario where deporting everyone from 1997 and onwards into the UK or Britain in particular. There's no scenario where that ends well. It's not realistic. So yeah, this is a multifaceted issue. I think we need to start having conversations about this whole green agenda. We're not allowed to use the raw materials, the resources in our earth, because the pollutants and all this sort of things, and we keep using them, the earth will explode. That's not going to happen. People exaggerate, and there's a lot of fear-mongering, and there's been fear-mongering for decades now, and they've always been wrong, and they exaggerate the numbers, and I think there's an agenda behind it, so I think we need to start like rejecting these people and just, yes, respecting the earth as much as we can, while also understanding that it can take the heat. Like, we'll be fine, and we'll eventually find alternatives. We'll be okay. Humans are great at adapting. We'll be fine. So we need to start tapping into our natural resources, our energy resources, so that we can reduce the cost of living, reduce the cost of electricity, and all these sort of things to make. Because guys, if you reduce the price of a lot of fossil fuels, you need to understand the effects are so widespread. Like, it'll make restaurants cheaper. If you think about the restaurant owner who gets his goods delivered to him from this farm that's far away, if the cost of fuel goes down because the cost of oil went down, then all of a sudden transportation costs are cheaper, therefore the price of like the raw ingredients for your food are cheaper, so it makes the price of the food you sell at the restaurant cheaper. Every industry benefits. If electricity costs are cheaper, you don't have to pay as much to keep the lights on in the building, so then you have more money to spare, so you don't have to charge as much for a plate of food in the restaurant. So and so on and so forth. Every industry will benefit from lower energy costs, which will just make the cost of living cheaper, which then will, for those people who are saying that we don't want to have children because it's too expensive, well, things are cheaper now, so have fun. I think a lot of people, they just use an excuse. I think there's some people who can't afford to have children, they just choose not to. And that's a different type of problem. But yeah, like I said, it's a cultural issue as well. I think it's mainly a cultural issue. It's not an economic one. People say it's an economic issue. It's not. Because I think you'd see that even if the economy was great, people still wouldn't have kids. They just don't want to. And I think the messaging just needs to change around children and all these sort of things. I think the messaging is horrible. There are a lot of people who are just very anti-children. We need to sideline them and then pop up people who are very pro-family, pro-marriage, pro-having kids, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So we bring down cost of living. We encourage women to be wives and mothers. We don't force anyone to do anything they don't want to do. Please don't call me names. If you want to work, you can continue to work. I'm just talking about what we promote, what are the images we promote, who are the people we venerate in our society, who are the heroes of our society. Wives and mothers should be the heroes, more so than lawyers and doctors and all these other things. You know, they do important work, but bro, if women stop giving birth to kids, we're fucked. We're cooked, guys. There is no doctor or lawyer because they weren't even born to begin with. Wives and mothers should be championed more than anyone else, so that people, like young kids, when you ask them in class what they want to be when they grow up, they're like, I want to be a mom. And that's not a funny thing to say, that's not a weird thing to say, that's actually something like, oh wow, we need more of that in society. And then embrace immigration. Embrace it as the future. Technology means we can travel easier than ever before. The internet means we're connected to different parts of the world like never before. People have internet friends. My adorable niece, she came here to South Africa from the UK like 2-3 years ago. She's never been to South Africa. She had a friend that she met up with at a mall that she met on Tumblr. She never seen this person in real life before. She lived in England, came here to South Africa on the opposite side of the planet, and met up with someone at the mall because they've been communicating via Tumblr for a long time. The internet is connecting different parts of the world. So you've got travel that's easier than possible. You've got the internet, plus you've got global trade. We rely on each other for various resources. There's no country on this planet that's just self-sufficient. You don't need anything from anyone. Boats are constantly traveling, planes are constantly traveling, whatever, because we're exchanging all these goods and services, which means we're also exchanging people. The professionals are flying to this part of the world. We need you to go fly over to this country and join our branch in Hong Kong and you're going to be leading this department, this, whatever. People are migrating constantly. There's labor shortages in this country, like we are hiring, we know that this country specializes in this industry, so please, we will pay you well if you just leave your country and come here and work for us. There's all these exchanges going on. So in the face of all that, immigration is inevitable, but people just need to embrace it so that we can make things more efficient and we can find ways to preserve our cultures and societies instead of bickering about whether we should or shouldn't have it. It's going to happen regardless. a place like Japan, for example, should just be like, instead of being closed off, start asking yourself, how can we maintain Japanese society while also embracing immigration? I think it's inevitable. Some people don't see it that way. I'm like, whoa, I just don't see any other way. So yeah, energy costs, promoting family, promoting people being wives and mothers, embracing immigration. If we do those three things, I think we can enter into an era of prosperity unlike anything ever seen before. Things can get easier. But I think, yeah, because things are changing, humans don't like change, there's going to be a lot of resistance, and we might experience some growing pains. But I think the world is changing fundamentally, and things will never be the same ever again. I think the concept of a homogenous country would be like, what? There used to be countries that was just one type of person, like one race group. I think that would very much be the case. A lot of places already are like that. South Africa is known as a rainbow nation because there's so many different ethnicities here, different race groups here. America is the same. Very, like, white people used to be like 80% in the early days of America. Now it's like by 2040, they're predicting that white people will be less than 50% of the population, which some white people are just not happy about. Gosh, race is so irrelevant. It's not something, it's not neither here nor there. But the issue is some people genuinely believe that race is strongly tied to ideology. Like, white people think there's a certain way and black people think there's a certain way. It's like, no, guys, this is like how you're raised. This is very cultural. It shouldn't mean much that racial demographics are changing. You should mostly be concerned about the culture. How do we preserve the culture? Because people are coming from different parts of the world. How do we integrate them? How do we make sure that they are strongly integrated and we reject people that refuse to integrate? Because there are people who go to America wanting to change America. I don't think that's right. I think you should go to America because you want to be part of the country and contribute, not because you want to take away and then reshape it in your image. Don't go if you don't like the country. Like, why would you go to Japan, for example? Like, I don't like Japan and how conservative and how collectivist it is. I want to change it so that it matches what the image of that I have of it in my head. That's not fair. It's like, yeah, it's unreasonable. So go somewhere else. So countries should definitely just embrace people coming in and figure out how we can preserve the culture and society and not be so obsessed with race. I think a lot of places are just going to start being very mixed. Eventually, as the centuries pass, I think that'll be the whole world. As travel gets easier and easier and easier, it's going to be very rare to find a country that's like 90% white or 90% Japanese or Chinese or whatever. I think that would be a very rare thing. That's my prediction. We'll see. We'll see. I rambled, man. But yeah, like I said, I've been just thinking about this for the past couple of days, and researching and just looking at the numbers. And I mean, that's the conclusion I've come to. We'll see, man. How old am I? I don't know. I'm 24, 2025. Very soon. So I still have time on this earth. I'm very curious to see what Earth is going to look like when I'm old and gray. How long am I going to live? I want to live long, guys. I hope I can touch 100. I think that human beings, our lifespans are just going to increase further and further and further. I would like to touch 120 years old at least. 120 years old at least. I think I can push beyond that, to be honest. I think we're going to be seeing people hitting age 150. I think we'll eventually see people reach age 200. I think it's very possible. Life expectancy have just been going up and up. I don't think it's limitless. I think there is a cap. But maybe without like installing things in your body and whatnot, maybe we cap around 120 years old or something like that. I don't know. I don't know if you can reach age 200 without implants or stuff like that. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure. We'll see how long I live, but I'm very curious to see what the Earth looks like by the time I'm like on my way out. I want to see how far society progresses, and if my predictions are correct. I think they are. I just don't see any way, other way this will go. It's just everything is flowing in that direction. That's where everything is pointed towards. So that's why I'm making that prediction. We'll see. Anyway, you know I like to pray at the end of all my videos. So dear Father God, thank you for this individual watching this channel. Thank you for making them whole, unique, and guide them on a path towards peace, prosperity, and purpose. Thank you for blessing this person with wonderful people in their life. We love them. Take care of them. Bring the absolute best out of them. Thank you for maintaining the ones that are there to do the same thing. Thank you for blessing this person with love and marriage, and sustaining the love and marriage and making you very, very happy. Thank you for blessing this person with a spirit of gratitude so they can give thanks for the wonderful things in life. And by giving thanks, they can find peace, contentment, and attract even more blessings. Let your presence be felt in this person's life, so much of God, that you will, that you love others, be there for them. Good health, all life, and happiness of this person that they care about. In my name, in Jesus' name, I pray. Amen, amen, and amen.